Hi, this is guidance for Criterion D Strand 1 of the DTIA, in which you will justify a testing strategy to measure the success of your prototype. In Criterion D, you are encouraged to use extended writing. Your justification of a testing strategy to measure the success of your prototype should be about 1 page long and about 200 words. A testing strategy is essentially a plan. It comprises a series of tests that will be carried out on the prototype to gather data for analysis. The analysis of the data leads to a determination of the success of the prototype as a solution to the design problem. Your testing strategy must directly relate to the design specifications. The design specification is a series of points the solution must address. So the testing strategy must be designed to provide data to prove the solution met all aspects of the design specification. So for instance, you must address aesthetics and function and material and size. All of those must be addressed in your testing strategy. Each aspect of the design specification must be tested objectively. This means that each test needs to provide either qualitative or quantitative data that you can use to justify whether your solution met the requirements of the design specification. You need to base your determinations on evidence and not on personal opinion. Each test included in your testing strategy must address one or more aspects of the design specification. When coming up with your testing strategy, you need to consider the following. What does the test comprise? How and from whom will the data be generated? What type of data is generated? Is it qualitative or quantitative? The relative importance of each test, providing a clear sequence for testing. I would suggest that this match your design specifications. Justification on how it leads to objective determinations of the success of the solution. Justification of how the tests lead to the objective determination of success of the solution is key to meeting the requirements for the higher mark band performances. The following is an example of 3 levels of performance in a testing strategy. You'll note that the yellow text is stating the test, the blue text is describing the test, the what, and the green italicized text is justifying the test, the why. Testing all aspects of the design specification should be planned in the testing strategy. However, one test may test a number of different aspects. For example, a well-planned test based on observing a user interact with the prototype to perform a particular function may provide data on aspects related to function, ergonomics, size and weight, materials, and aspects of safety. Additional data could be gathered through a post-observation interview and taking measurements during the observation itself. Qualitative and quantitative data can be gathered. Qualitative data typically is descriptive data that is used to find out the depth of the way that people feel and think, their perceptions. Qualitative data focuses on qualities that can be observed but not really measured. Quantitative data is data that is measured and recorded using numbers. Qualitative data can sometimes be subjective. It can be based on opinions. Students need to consider the size of a user group to ensure that there is sufficient data from which to draw objective conclusions. Also, students need to consider if it is appropriate to determine the success of the prototype against particular aspects of the design specification using qualitative data if quantitative data can provide a more objective evaluation. For example, qualitative feedback from users stating something looks weak or could be cracked easily is not appropriate to determine the durability of a product. However, carrying out performance testing, destructive testing, such as dropping product from increasingly high heights to see if it gets damaged and measuring the size of any cracks in the product provides quantitative data that can be used to inform the evaluation objectively. Some of the types of testings that you can conduct are categorized in this table. One type is performance testing. The product is tested under conditions specified in the design specifications. Some performance testing can be destructive, for example, durability or safety testing. So the order of performance tests or the availability of more than one prototype for testing might be important. And this would probably give you quantitative data. You can seek expert appraisal. An expert chosen on the basis of their knowledge or experience is asked to assess the product. This type of testing relies on the knowledge and skills of the expert in the operation of the product. Expert knowledge and advice are gained compared to user trials, but the expert may be biased, and that would give you qualitative data. You can do a user trial. So this would be observing the people using the product and the collection of comments from people who use the product. They are typically members of the target audience. I would highly recommend that. Users may carry out tasks in different ways from those expected, and they may be inexperienced with the product, and you would get qualitative data from this. You can do user research. So this would be obtaining user responses through questionnaires, surveys, and interviews. This can be done individually or in focus groups, and you would get qualitative and quantitative data from this. Comparing to existing products is also an option. A comparison against existing products can determine if the prototype is as good as the competition or has better features, and you could get qualitative and quantitative data from this. You should note that the development of high-achieving testing strategies is made easier when you have well-written design specifications. As you develop your testing strategies, you should note that some aspects of the design specifications are easier to objectively test than others. For example, if a prototype has a specific size constraint or requirement, this can be easily tested physically by just measuring. This should also have been considered when designing the prototype. Other aspects are more difficult to determine. For example, if the aesthetic needs to appeal to a particular group of people, the student will need to collect data that is subjective to the group of people that they need to collect the data from. The outcome is much more unpredictable. In this case, the student will need to consider collecting and analyzing qualitative feedback to discover the overall opinion of that group. They can also provide a statistical determination. For example, 12 out of 20 surveyed agreed the prototype is aesthetically pleasing, but should additionally consider the negative feedback to identify weaknesses of the prototype. Subjective testing requires students to carefully consider the questions that they're asking to get the information they need to objectively determine the prototype's success. A quick note about the performance example. The performance examples that we used here is from a project where a student designed a balanced bicycle using locally sourced material as a device to promote motor function and balance in children aged 3 to 7 years old. In this excerpt from a high-performance example, the student presents a range of testing methods as a testing strategy. They indicate the type of testing, which is the priority, and then includes further detail of each testing method. The student then includes a justification for why the testing method is included in the testing strategy. The justification directly relates to aspects of the design specification. The purpose of each test is clearly linked to measuring the success of the prototype and details why specific constraints are used. This is an example of a medium performing testing strategy. The student presents a range of testing methods as a testing strategy. They indicate the type of testing which is prioritized and then include further details of each testing method. The student then attempts to justify why the testing method is included in the testing strategy. However, this attempt is somewhat generic and lacks the detail that would provide a rationale for their inclusion. The attempt at justification tends to state what the test is for rather than why it has been chosen as part of the strategy. This is an example of a low performance for a testing strategy. The student states what they're going to do, but there's no rationale of why they are carrying out these tests or what aspects of the specification will be tested.